Computer.
Oh, hey, by the way, though, it was good, that reback on the audio.
I think we're going right now. So I think we are
Oh, good stuff.
live.
Dude,
We
but the reback was good, yeah? Whenever you listen back, you couldn't hear me through.
No, it was fine. Yeah. So
Awesome,
we're
dude. This is good stuff.
yeah. So we are live right now on Outlast the Iron. These are your hosts, Alex Feinberg, Zach Homol. This is our first episode that we're recording. Really excited to get going. I kind of thought that before we get started, it would make sense to share with the listening audience how we actually got to know each other. So many people listening are familiar with either Zach or myself, sort of obviously. But you'll notice that I was later to the Twitter game than Zach was. Zach's been doing his thing, I think under a couple of different handles for several years. But I personally was experiencing success in the program that I was building for myself, through 2018. And I really wanted to share with the world, the fact that I was able to get really good results, I thought, while eating a diet that I thought was delicious, and conserving the emotional energy that so many people seem to sink into maintaining a physique at a high level. And I thought that I was doing well with my lifts. I could bench press about 300 pounds. I could squat nearly 400 pounds. And I could deadlift, maybe mid 400 pounds. And I thought, based on who I would see at my gym, like that was pretty decent. But like many of you guys, I came onto Twitter and I saw Zach not just lift, impressive amounts of weight, which is fine because you see a lot of people on the internet lifting as much or even more than Zach. What really impressed me was his understanding of positioning and his understanding of leverages, and the way he would speak through the movement patterns of the body as one thing connects to another. And when Zach made an offer to the Twitter sphere last year about taking on remote clients, I thought, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. I've seen so many people pitch their fitness programs or speak through why certain exercises are beneficial. And I've been a professional athlete, and I've never heard anybody speak with the level of fluency or the acumen, the grasp of the movement patterns as well as Zach. And so with the prices he was charging last year, I thought, this is like, I'd buy 100 of them if I could. Like, this is ridiculous that somebody of this knowledge level is willing to work with, people from Twitter for this amount. And so we got to talking, we got to jamming, and, kind of figured out that we have a lot in common in terms of how we perceive the world. Huh? Yeah, right. Who would have thought, a guy growing up in West Virginia, to a coal mining family, sleeves full of tattoos, with a guy whose dad's a lawyer and, graduated from a top 20 university, no tattoos, no piercings, no arrests on his record. So Zach, I'm really happy that we can get this going. And then just for some more context for our audience, so I had worked with Zach for a couple months last year as a client, but I have a shoulder issue, and I'll have that for the rest of my life. I dislocated it a couple times in college. I had surgery on it, and the mobility of it was just really getting bad last year. And so I've actually spent like the last 10 months not doing any pressing work or shoulder work while I rehab it and regain my mobility. Fortunately, I haven't lost like a ton of chest mass doing it for some reason.
No, you haven't.
Yeah, which is crazy because I was expecting.
I mean, you ain't got much mass to lose, but.
I mean, I was expecting, my chest to collapse, basically, because I went from doing dumbbell presses of 90 pounds on the incline to maybe 100, 110, 115, 120 on flat, as well as working weight 225 to 240 on barbell bench, to not doing anything, like not even push-ups. But for some reason the mass is still there. And basically I decided earlier this year I wanted to break my gym's deadlifting record. And so I decided that as much fun as I was having, doing my show pony thing, training in my style, eating in my style, I'm 33 years old, about to turn 34. I kind of figured, like, why don't I try to get one high deadlift number, like without hurting myself, before I, put it into downshifted gear and go full-time show pony for the rest of my life. And so I re-engaged with Zach about 5 weeks ago to switch from my normal, more jolly, country club type plan, as he might refer to it, that actually works and got me to like 3.5% body fat, to a more normal training plan that is a little bit higher volume, that will hopefully allow me to build the strength necessary to add 50 to 60 pounds to my deadlift over a 12-week period, which would put me in a position to actually break that record. And so Zach and I jam for, hour or plus every week, catching up on these sorts of things as well as others. And we wanted to release it to the wild, to let everybody learn, laugh, do whatever you want with it. So Zach, glad we can get this going.
Alex, that was an incredible intro.
I appreciate that. It's weird. Like, you speak well. I've noticed people in my life who speak well, who can do intros like that. And I didn't realize this until one of my best friends was recording a testimonial for me. And it's like, most people can't speak without doing a ton of rehearsing and, practicing. And I don't know if it's from playing sports or from playing sports and having coaches who could speak really well, but I guess I'm really fortunate both in, my personal life, but also my professional life, simply being able to articulate what you're thinking in real time without writing it out beforehand probably saves me like a couple hours a day. Instead of
and you pair that with a couple of things that you talked about is your past experiences playing professional sports and playing sports at a high level. That builds a level of confidence. We talked about this multiple times. When you're standing in front of a big crowd, 10, 5, 10, 15, 20,000 people, whatever it looks like, and you're getting heckled by a middle-aged guy behind you, you begin to realize that his opinion is pretty irrelevant. He's watching. You're the gladiator. You're in the sport. So this builds this level of confidence too that I think helps a ton with speaking.
I think so too. And maybe to extend that analogy of playing in front of 5, 10,000 people, people ask me, and I'm sure they ask you, what are the key points that shifted your mindset, that make you think what you think and why you think it? And, people, as they get to know us, will know that, there's parts of us that are very, very normal that will blend in totally with other people in terms of some dumb interests. I'm sure we like stupid media content that's like for people with 90 IQs or something like that. But at the same time, we also have perspective that's very unique from competing at a high level and knowing how to channel your focus in a way that allows you to compete at that level. And for me, I don't know about you, for you, Zach, but for me, it probably took me like 2, 3, 4 years of actually playing in front of 5 to 10,000 people on a semi-regular basis before I really had the mental switch to change from what are these people thinking about me? What are these people saying about me? To these people don't matter. All they're going to do is get in my way. My focus is between the lines. My focus is not on what some 40-year-old man is telling me as a 21-year-old man, because that man who brought his kids to the game to heckle a college student is not somebody that I should fear. And it's not somebody I should look up to. And it's not really, frankly, somebody that I should even consider to be a living being. This dude's twice my age. Why is this guy heckling me? Forget him. He doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just like, and this just brings right into another conversation that we had previously had. I think it's cool to talk about that. Everything looks the same on social media, right? All the words look the same. People's pictures look the same. You can put whatever picture you want up as your ivory. When you think about this and you kind of like start to retract some of that back a little bit, when you think about, let me just kind of give my personal take on this. I haven't been in front of 5 to 10,000 people who compete. Not that many people who show up at a strongman competition. Usually it's some friends and family. Might have 100, 150 people. So I'm
sure they're all weirdos too.
And they're all a bunch of weirdos and hill jacks. And typically these people are super cool and encouraging and cheering. No one's really cheering for me to suck. At any strongman or powerlifting competition I've really been to, naturally you're competing and you want to win, but you show up and you be your strongest. It's a really, unique and cool community. However, powerlifting is a little bit more niche-y. I feel like the strongman, as far as like hagglers or people like, oh, the depth wasn't there. You didn't pause long enough for bench, or you hinged on the deadlift, And I think it's more so because there's actual less competition between competitors and more competitions with self. So meaning if I come into if you can squat 400 and I can squat 700, we both weigh 181, you're not going to squat 720 that day.
Right.
it's mostly a competition to be your best self, right?
Right.
In that particular moment. Whereas in strongman, you have a little bit more of that competitive nature back and forth. So
Right.
you're going to have, you guys, but anyways, kind of coming back and being in front of a stage. I was never in front of 10,000 people. However, I grew my social media following up on Instagram, and something I'll talk about a lot of Snapchat. I had over 15,000 people, 15,000 eyes on my Snapchat when Snapchat first started coming out. So I was rocking Snapchat before I was ever rocking Twitter. And even I was running Snapchat way better than I was running my Instagram at the time. And how I grew my Snapchat up was right outside of high school, or whenever, Snapchat had came out for me. I don't even know what year that was. I was putting out a free workout every day on my Snapchat. So exactly what I was doing every day, I'd put out on my Snapchat. And, I talk about it a little bit on my social media channels, but basically people just started coming to me through Snapchat to get my free workout each day. And I did that, for 3 or 4 years, maybe 2 or 3 years, until I lost my job with Muscle Farm. And that's when I'm like, oh, I'm going to stop pulling this off Snapchat and be like, hey, I'm not charging for my coaching. And that's actually how my coaching online took off, because I gave value for, 2 to 3 years of free workouts. And then I'm like, hey, I'm going to start charging for this now. So people had been receiving results for fucking 3 years before they hopped on. So my stage was not so much the heckler, yelling directly at me, rather the comments on my post. Oh, you didn't squat deep enough. Oh, you didn't do this. For me, and it never registered exactly until you talked about it that one time. I think you were at my house when we were just chit chatting, and you're like, dude, if a fucking bum in San Francisco is like, oh, Zach, you didn't squat deep enough. You go, you wouldn't give a fuck, right? And I'm like, right. He's like, but all the words look the same on Twitter, and all the words look the same on Instagram. So, they cut a little bit deeper. Yeah. But over the years, I kind of became callous to that, knowing that no matter what I do, I can't impress everybody. Right. Like, for crying out loud, I bench 315 for 24 at 189 pounds, and people are like, well, you didn't lock every rep out. Right. It's just like, I know that I'm not going to be able to continually impress everybody. So for me, my battle wasn't so much the stage that was directly in front of me as yours, rather the social media opinions that I was receiving from a plethora of people that I was listening to their opinion when I had no right to listen to their opinion.
Yeah, and it's super interesting. And maybe if you want to back up like 6 inches from the mic, because I think it's causing a little bit of audio distortion for the audience. But,
sorry, bro. We'll get better at this as we go.
We'll get better. Just, first run, no warm-ups. It took us 30 minutes.
Content will be great.
Content will be good. It took us 30 minutes to get started because, between the two of us, I've worked at Google for 6 years. I've worked in Silicon Valley for 8 years. It's challenging for me to start digital meetings.
A Zoom meeting.
Yeah, exactly. And I do them every day. So yeah, I think to maybe give the audience a little bit of context about what we're talking about, social media hecklers. So one thing that I've found to be true over the last like 6 or 8 years is when we were growing up, we would watch the news, and the news was presented by people who could put on this image of being serious. They tended to, be good looking, men and women who would present the story as they saw it. Now, maybe they weren't supermodels, but they were like reasonably good looking, well put together people. And when you transition, people like us. And so when you transition from being able to see the person talking to moving to a online first world, you assume that the text that you're reading is being typed by somebody who's similar to the person who is like presenting the news to you, or at least a similar person to your peers. And what you don't realize, what you lack the context in, is a lot of people who are like really, really angry and really, really bitter actually have physical cues that they emit when you interact with them in real life. Like something's off about these people. You can just tell by their body language. You can tell by the way they look, by the way they dress, by the way they walk.
There's a missing key to the communication. You're 100% right.
Something's off. But if you put these people behind a keyboard, when they write, your deadlift, you didn't lock out fully on your bench press. And when I write, you didn't fully lock out on your bench press, that text type looks the same. Twitter doesn't give them an uglier font than it gives me or Zach. Twitter doesn't give them an uglier avatar, or uglier computer avatar. And it's almost always people with avatars who are making these comments, by the way. If you'll notice that. It's very few people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right?
I saw an example the other day. A guy said that. So I just made sure I go back a few days later. I'm like, hey, man, do you still have that same opinion about me? Because I'll respond and like give them some context. And be like, hey, do you still have that same opinion? And they never answer.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, that's just a personal insecurity. A lot of times too, when I'm on social media and I'll call out haters, you'll see that, and I'll
Of
actually
course.
drive more traffic my way, because
Right.
what it does is it creates a harsher divide. And that's all that news channels do. They create harsh divides, and humans, we're so funny. We have to choose a side. I like the Steelers. Well, I like
Right.
the Browns. And then you
Right.
argue with each other, but you feel as if you're part of something. That's why people
Right.
join gangs and biker
Yeah.
clubs, because
Yep.
everyone wants to feel like they're part of a community, right?
Yeah, and beyond that, you know, when we were growing up, when I was growing up, I would see, you know, my only way to watch sports, like many people listening, was through TV. And so I didn't, when I was 7 years old, I didn't know the professional athletes that I know now, because I was 7 years old and nobody in my family played pro sports. So my only exposure to the World Series, to the Super Bowl, to any of these big events was as it was told to me by ESPN. And so when I am grappling with these events, I think these are huge, 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 enormous events. Like, there must be so much pressure. This is unbelievable. This is the most important thing that's going on for me now. And only did I realize, you know, 20 years later, when I was working at Google, working with media companies, understanding the business dynamics behind this, it's like, oh no, actually, this huge media company paid $20 million a year for the rights to stream XYZ event. They need to be able to justify their investment. So the way they justify their investment is they're going to hype it up to their audience, to make their audience think that this is the biggest rivalry since XYZ. This is the shot for redemption if it's a rematch. This is the shot to prove this. And so they're going to take every small piece of human emotion and amplify it 100 times, because that's what's going to make people interested. That's going to attract eyeballs, and that's going to make the $20 million they're paying that sports league or that sports team a year to stream their matches. It's going to make that investment worth it. And so
Perception's reality.
yeah,
Perception. I mean, on a very, very, very small scale, you posted that day, whenever I said your abs are weak, your abs look good, but they're weak. And you had so many people below just comment like, this guy's an insecure asshole, blah, blah, blah. Like, meanwhile, I'm your coach on the back end just telling you suck at something. You got to get better, right? But what it did,
but
though,
they don't realize is I was the one who generated it. I was like, so I think my core is my point of failure on my squats and deadlifts. I know it sounds weird. And then you're like, no, it's 100% true.
Yeah, you know, and that's just like kind of hopping in that, you know, there's a big difference between having a, you know, or kind of like, you know, talking about that point a little bit longer though, you know, show pony racehorse. Like, we do it on a very small level, you know,
Mm-hmm.
create these perceptions of show ponies and racehorses and what that looks like for us, and create that little divide. And we get people talking on like what, you know, what I want to be more aesthetically pleasing, or I want to
Yeah.
be, I want to be stronger and more brute force. But you create that division, and then people start choosing sides on what they want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
You know, and you see so many social media accounts. That's how they build massive followings, is by having very biased and brash opinions. And people are like, oh yeah, I fully support this, because they act off
Right.
of emotion. And then
Right.
they're like, I'm joining this tribe and I'm a part of this because you think that all women should stay home and just cook and clean all day. And that's what I
Right.
want my
Right.
wife
Right.
to do.
Right.
So it's like
Right.
everyone just joins the same exact tribe to be a part of that
Right.
tribe. Right.
Right.
And
It's
anybody on social media can build a voice if they just say the right things.
right.
And they say what people want to hear.
Yeah, I think Vince McMahon understands this probably like as well as anybody else. It's like if you, and I'm not like, I don't even watch WWE and I probably would butcher the history of it, but if you just imagine what this guy thought of whenever it started like 40 years ago, he's like, I'm gonna script like large men jumping at each other in rings, but I'm gonna determine who wins. But
And
that's not even gonna be
also,
what
I'm
it's
going to make
about.
them wear oil and tight pants, and they're going to hold each other's down, but kind of not really.
Well, you know, as was the
It's a
style in the
genius
70s.
plan. If you think about it, it's an absolute genius plan. Um, and I think, you know, people like Vince McMahon, I don't even know if he even understands it, but I think it is so second nature to him. Like, for instance, for me with training and lifting weights and understanding movement and biomechanics, like, I haven't done any time in college. And I
Right.
did, it was in business school when I failed out of business, but I did have no biomechanics certificates or degrees or nothing like this. But I've just learned all this stuff from naturally just being able to understand it and constantly being around it. It wasn't something that
Right.
I necessarily needed to be taught to me in order to
Right.
understand. And I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people who are at these top levels of understanding things, it's not actually needed to be taught to them. It just comes naturally to them. It's a
Right.
natural reaction for them. You know, the
Right.
best athletes in the world don't think about the next move. They react
Correct. Correct.
constantly. You're constantly reacting to the next move. So to
Correct.
get to the top level, you can an average person can be above average about anything if they work
Correct.
really hard, but
Yes.
the odds of them actually being great without having that natural God-given strength or talent
Right.
is very few and far between.
Right. And
Like
I
a very
think,
few and far between are you going to be a 5'8" guy in the
right,
NBA. You'll
right.
see them sometimes, but not usually. The exceptions are not the rule, which is kind of like you and your style of training.
Yeah.
So Alex has this, since you've hyped me up at the beginning of the episode, let me go and talk about you for a second. Okay. So Alex is one of these guys. He's the most unique client I've ever worked with, for the fact being that this guy knows how to eat 3,000 to 5,000 calories a day, basically all the healthy foods that he wants to eat, and maintain one of the leanest, hardest, and strongest physiques at his particular body weight that I've maybe ever come across with working. He doesn't do anything though. He does like 4 reps in the gym. He looks massive. I'm just joking, but he does very little workload in relation to how I train my athletes and the demand that I put underneath my athletes. I'm not saying I run my athletes completely into the dirt, but this guy's just learned how to perfect his body to know the exact energy input and exact energy output he needs to constantly make incremental gains, both with his physique and with his body. So essentially, when Alex starts working with anybody, whether it's me or another great coach in the industry, he's going to find that these subtle changes that we're making, like he's up 0.5% body fat right now, right? You're currently up 0.5% body fat, and the
You
demand
can
of the
see it in my
workload.
face, right?
Yeah, you can see that you're kind of up a little bit, but
Yeah.
you'll
They
still
look
die within a
healthier.
week of the apocalypse. But what it is, but what I like most about Alex is he's learned how to become optimal, just as I have with my training input output. I know exactly what my body needs. Like right now, I'm not even training but a few days a week, but I'm strength training in very strange and awkward positions, and like using rocks and different things to maintain my strength and even generate some more strength. And I'm doing a ton of core work, because I know that if I strengthen my core and I keep my upper back strong, that my presses will stay up and my squat and deadlift. I don't need a deadlift. Like, put it this way, I didn't sumo deadlift for 3 or 4 months, and I pulled 635 for 6. I don't need to always deadlift to get better at deadlift or to even maintain my deadlift, because I know what energy input and output I need to be able to continue to keep my strength gains moving forward. So what I like most about Alex, though, what I'm getting to, is that he still tries to reach out and be like, hey, I still believe that I can, increase my deadlift, and, to the point where it's like 40 pounds they're trying to put on your deadlift right now.
Yeah, 50, 40, 50, 60.
50
We
pounds.
don't even
50.
know what my one rep max was to start. It was just all guessing based on percentages. Because I haven't actually done anything.
Probably why your front squats are so much harder.
Yeah. Because like I'm like, I don't know, I could squat 415. Like maybe I can't. Maybe we should have run the programming off of 400 or something.
But what happens though is he still tries. He's still like, I like that about Alex. He's still looking to be an athlete and trying other programmings and other ways to develop himself. Something that we talked about the other day, Alex, was your energy input though, on how much food that you was taking in and how we are going to rearrange your caloric intake a little bit, because you're working with a caloric intake coach as well, right? Can you kind of chat a little bit about the things that we talked about there?
Yeah, so I'm always looking to get better, and that's one thing that kind of confuses people who come to it with a different mindset, right? So a lot of times people say, well, you have really good results. What are you ultimately hoping to achieve? And what they don't realize is my focus isn't on a destination, which is, an achievement-based thing. My focus is actually on the journey. Really, it truly is. And the journey meaning, how am I going to get incrementally better, or how am I going to continue to get better? Because I know if I continue to get better, then I can't get worse, right? And so, while it might not make sense for me to do something incredibly risky to improve my strength or athleticism, such as, performance enhancing drugs or something at my age, or, some sort of weird diet, where I'm starving myself or eating some sort of weird stuff. I always want to put myself in a position to continue to improve. And so I've had, quite good results, I think, over the last several years, as many of our listening audience would agree. But I'm always like, I'm in my 30s. The game that I'm playing now is beat time. And the only way I'm going to beat time is if I'm able to learn my body faster than it's naturally declining. And I decided that was the case about 3 years ago, where effort was no longer going to be the single minding, or the single factor behind my success. And really the gains I made over the last 3 years are just from being more intelligent about how I put my effort in. I'm actually putting less effort in now than I did 3 years ago, and I'm having better results, which is probably indicative of being onto something. And so despite the fact that I have my, caloric needs fairly well met, I've had people reach out to me like, hey, can I review your eating? Can I review this? Can I review that? And I think the catalyst for it was I took a testosterone test last year because I was curious where I was. And when I got the results back, it was like dead center. It was not, it wasn't bad, but it was average. And I don't view myself as average. I don't want to be average. And if I show up as average compared to like the average person, to me, that's not good. I don't want to be average. To me, average is like almost like a problem.
It most definitely is a problem.
Yeah. And so it's like
especially with the competitive mindset.
Totally. And so it's like my testosterone levels were like 590 or something, which is like for somebody who's 33 is like, that is like 50th percentile. But with the way that I train and the way that I eat, talking to other people are like, yeah, what's going on there? Like that should be like 800. And so basically the way that you unlock, gains or massive gains, like Zach knows and how he works with his clients, is you understand weakness development. Because if you look at what you're good at and what you're bad at, if you keep getting the things you're good at better, like at some point you face diminishing marginal returns. You're just not going to
Absolutely. And too much of everything is a negative too. And this is everything in life, but let's talk just about training alone. If you're only training your quads and you train your front half of your body, which most people will train their front half body way more than they train the back half of their body, presses and quad work and core work, enough upper back. You should be doing nearly 2 times the amount of hamstrings and posterior chain work as well as upper back work as you're doing press work. This is how we find incredible results with our athletes.
And before I continue my story, one thing, meeting Zach in person last year, one thing that you notice about him when you see him is he's incredibly wide. Like he's wider than you think he is from looking at him on Twitter or on Instagram. And one thing that I mentioned to him in Indiana last year at dinner was every strong person, every really, really strong person that I've ever met has a much more well-developed upper back than me at the time. Still the case now, but I've made significant gains over the last several months, but still, like every strong person that I see has a more developed upper back than I do.
Can I break down a little bit? So we were talking before you continue, we were discussing the amount of results. So I would say for most of our listeners and most logical people listening around the world right now, and for particular results of just getting in better shape, looking good, and being better, if you will, than average. Your approach to lifting weights, your approach to the incremental gains that you receive throughout a year, and your approach to eating makes the most logical sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes everyone should shoot for finding that I have to put in 30 minutes of effort a day or X amount of effort a day. And if I eat this way, I'm going to maintain a sub 10% body fat. I'm going to always have abs. And like you said, you can still pull 450 to 500. You know what I mean? You're still a strong guy, especially if you're only weighing 112 pounds.
122, man. Come on.
You're
112
still
last week.
So it makes a lot of sense. But I want to discuss the amount of results that you typically see in a year. How much do you typically increase your deadlift a year, increase your squat a year, increase your bench a year? Are these even tangible things that you're even looking to do, or do they just kind of naturally happen?
I mean, at this point, I'm happy with like any improvement, frankly. And so,
but you are searching for improvement. You're not just saying like, I'm just going in and doing 5x5 of 405 week after week. Cause there's a lot of people who just go in and they maintain it. Like, cause you even maintain a very consistent split, meaning you don't change exercise. Like I'm real big on exercise variations. There's a lot of people that go, oh, well, you don't need to confuse the muscles because they don't have a brain. I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to confuse your muscles. I'm trying to keep this thing. I'm trying to apply different stimuluses to your body, which is going to focus on different weaknesses.
Well,
right?
and
that's
so,
what people miss.
Yeah. Well, I also think
it's something you're seeing right now and a reason why you're a whole lot sore, but also why in 12 weeks, we're going to, quadruple your results in what you would typically get in a year.
Right. And so
is that a close number though?
Like, I think that's about fair. And so maybe to deep dive in terms of my typical approach, my typical gains, and how that might differ from other people is so, basically when I got done playing professional baseball, I decided that good looking people who are in good physical condition get paid more money for doing the same work as other people. And so I very much in my sports career, I wanted to do everything that I could to put myself in a position to be a Major League Baseball player. And I think I basically did that, short of taking performance enhancing drugs and maybe like spending a couple extra years riding buses. Like I pretty much gave like 99.7% of what I possibly could to achieve that dream. I didn't achieve it, but I understood the mindset of giving something everything you had. And so, going into the workforce, 2010, I think was my first working year. The economy
That was the
wasn't
year I graduated.
yeah. We were probably doing similar things at opposite ends of the world, because I was actually working in Hong Kong at the time, for a hedge fund manager. But one thing that I wanted to be sure is, a lot of people encouraged me. They said, Alex, you're smart, you're competitive, aggressive, you're going to do well in business. But I always questioned that because I just didn't necessarily know why. And I always wanted to make sure that if for whatever reason I wasn't successful, it wasn't for lack of effort. And I realized that being in good shape was, like a prerequisite. Like I can't look myself in the mirror and say I tried my best at my job if I show up fat every day. I need to be in good shape if I want to convince myself that I at least tried my hardest. And so most of my goals for training through my 20s were not to get abs. Like people don't realize that. People look at me and they look at my diet and they look at my training plan and they go, well, he must have amazing genetics. Oh, he was a professional athlete. Yeah, obviously he has amazing genetics. It's like, no, look at my physical development when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Like, yes, I was obviously above average. Yes, I put in a lot of work. Clearly probably top 10% in terms of genetics, but not top 1% in terms of genetics. And what I was trying to do in my 20s wasn't get to 4% body fat, because that was not possible in my mind. It was allow myself to drink beer, eat the food I want to eat, chase the girls I want to chase, and like have the lifestyle that I want to have, and like work and make money. Like my goals in my 20s were not to get super ripped, because the concept of getting super ripped to me was like so far removed, and I was already in decent shape. And so it wasn't until I got to, 27 or so years old, 27, 28 years old, that I tweaked my training program just a little bit and started leaning out a lot more than I thought was even possible, when I started running my cardio faster. And so part of what kind of tuned me into going about my training a little bit differently is, number one, it was always a lifestyle plan. It was always, how can I train in a way that allows me to eat as much tasty food as I want to eat? Most people approach training differently. What effort do I need to put in to achieve the results that I'm going to achieve? But because it was always a lifestyle plan for me, as a lifestyle person, I always want to put in like the minimum effort I can to get what I want to get from a lifestyle standpoint. But what I realized is, I was putting in such a high level of effort consistently, in my early and mid 20s, that I found that if I put in a higher level of effort, but a smaller quantity of it, I was able to get much better results than more typical training plans that are higher volume, higher
100%.
effort. And so much of what I do, and Zach makes fun of me, probably rightfully so, for the low volume that I do. You look at my training plans, you're like, that's my warm up. They require incredible amounts of focus. And so what people often get wrong is they say, okay, so this guy's only doing, 15 sets of lifting today, or he's only doing 12 sets of lifting today. Like I get through 12 sets of lifting in 24 minutes. And it's like, no. That's not the kind of lifting that I normally do for 12 sets. It's like, I'm really, really exhausting my body.
It's the intensity, and that's what it comes down to. Is it's output. It's always output. Guys come into my gym and they work out for 2 or 3 hours, but they apply less output than I do in 20 minutes.
Right.
And that's really what it's all about: energy input and energy output. So what Alex has done was find a way, and I did this when I was at the peak of my powerlifting. When I was at the peak of powerlifting, I was squatting 720, deadlifting 720, and benching 465 at 180 pounds. When I'm at the peak of that means I was literally pushing my body to its maximum potential of what it could handle. It couldn't handle much more than that because I had been teeter-tottering there so high. But what I did is I got super specific on the amount of energy output I was doing with the amount of energy output I was putting into my body. Essentially what I did was I found a series of exercises that was most practical for me to receiving the results that I had at hand. The result wasn't to look, in your particular case, just to look good and to be advance myself through the corporate ladder, whatever that might look like. For me, it was trying to become the best powerlifter that I could possibly be. But at that time, when I was transitioning from coal mining into the sales, when I was in sales with Muscle Farm, are you there, Alex? You're
Yeah,
freezed.
yeah. Oh, no,
Okay,
no.
you're just really stiff.
That happens when I'm on this 5x4 training plan, man. I'm in deep
But what
thought.
ended up I had to be super, I guess we could say specific with the exercises that I was choosing, because I had to make sure that each and every exercise was playing into the end goal that I had. And the end goal that I had was obviously squatting, benching, and deadlifting as much as I possibly could. So I had a small rotation of exercises that I would do. I was never in the gym more than an hour, and usually 35 minutes of it looked like a little bit of a warm up and working myself up to a top set of whatever it was on my squat, bench, or deadlift, and then going out. Following that, I would do one main accessory movement, which is developed around my weakness, which, at that time it was always like lower back or hamstrings or glutes. So I'd do something of a good morning or hip hinge exercise. And then I would do whatever time I had left, which is like 5 to 15 minutes. I would just blow up with volume. And I did this for a long time, just seated rows. And I did seated rows for 15 straight minutes. Like I do as many reps as I could, take a break. Many reps as I could, take a break. And this wasn't the most optimal approach for, I haven't ran this program on anybody else besides myself. And the reason why is I knew exactly what my body needed at that time. You know exactly what you see, right? Which is going to be looking good with your shirt off and being in that top percent. But now when your goals changed a little bit, which is what they did, like, hey, I want to kind of beat the clock. I want to deadlift 600. I want to squat this, whatever it is. That's when you have to change your protocol, the meat, the intensity within your program, because insanity is doing the same thing over and over, thinking for a different result. You would have still got good results with your split. Yeah. All we're doing is speeding up your results. And there's also a lot to be said. If you speed your results up too fast, just be honest, like if we didn't take a logical approach at this, like if I just threw you right into 80% stuff, right? Yeah. You would burn out too quick and you wouldn't receive the results you want. And you would also have more risk of injury.
Not just that. It's like, I'm frankly not interested in training in this style all year. Like when I think about the lifts that Zach has me doing now, like I don't enjoy those workouts. But it's like, it's okay. Like, but it really, like you laugh, but it's like, it's true, because for me, the reason that I've been able to get good results over a multi-year period of time is I'm able to manipulate my programming such that it's like anti-fragile, in the sense that I'm not trying harder than my results are justifying, right? And so I'm working very hard, but not to the point of exhaustion and hating training, right? So the reason I've been able to be consistent for multiple years is the fact that I know what limit I can push myself to while still wanting to come back to the gym. And that's the thing that a lot of people can't quite get, because maybe it's because they want to accelerate results faster than they can possibly get. They're unrealistic about themselves. But for me, as long as I want to keep training, as long as I want to keep maintaining the path that I'm on, I'm going to continue to make progress longer, right? It's almost like, as long as I have money in the bank, I'm going to keep earning interest on that, outside of like today. But in normal times, I would continue to earn interest on it. My training plan is basically structured like, how can I make it as low weight on my mind as possible so that I enjoy doing it, so that I can do it for as long a period as possible? Because ultimately, if I can get incremental results almost indefinitely, I'm going to get to a really good spot. Now, I can't do that necessarily from a strength standpoint, because it's like, I probably, if I wanted to break this record, it's going to be easier to do it in my mid or early 30s than my later 30s. I don't actually want to be putting that type of stress on my back on a continual basis. I would rather just say, like, okay, so here's 12 weeks. Let me see what I can do. And frankly, like the training that I'm doing to build the, hopefully 50 pounds or so on my deadlift, it's harder mentally than the stagnant training that I program for myself. The reason why I like doing similar exercises over and over again is I will acknowledge that it's probably not as effective for me as a rotational plan, a well thought out rotational plan, which Zach can provide, compared to a not well thought out rotational plan, which what most trainers provide, which gives the muscle confusion idea a bad name, because most people who say, well, you need to confuse your muscles, bro, are probably full of shit, right? But if Zach says something similar, that doesn't mean he's full of shit. He's actually doing it correctly, whereas 95% of people are doing it incorrectly. But the reason why I don't normally do that on my own is because every time I show up to the gym doing my own training, I have a static goal in mind. It's like, can I beat what my last working set PR was from the prior week? And so that can be maybe dangerous as I get to my mid 30s, later 30s, early 40s. But, fortunately, knock on wood, up until this date, haven't had any like catastrophic lifting injuries. And what I try to do is, okay, so today is tricep push down days and back. Last week I did tricep push downs, 4 sets of 5 at 110. I did rows at 205, 5 sets of 5 or something. This week, let me try to be 1 rep better than I was last week. And it's a very simple goal. I'm going to go in. I know exactly the mindset that I need to take to performing at the level that I performed at last week. Let me take the rest periods I need to take. Let me fuel my body the way I need to fuel it. And let me focus the way I need to focus to beat last week by 1 rep. And the reality is, most times I'm in there, I don't beat last week by 1 rep. The reality is, most times I'm in there, I match last week. Sometimes I'm behind last week. Sometimes I'm ahead of last week. I'm ahead of last week.
You know why? You know why? Because the body's not graphs, right? This is something I talk about a lot. You're looking at the body, and speaking of the body like a computer, like you're seeing this straight. What's your body? There's some weeks why you don't. So if you look at this, let's say your intensities, let's just call it 450, and your next week you're trying to hit 450, but actually you come in and you hit 430. That means the intensity was a little lower. And let's say 2 weeks later you come in and you hit 460. That means the intensity is higher. What your body's doing is naturally waiving its intensities. Now, if you just put more thought behind it, kind of like the program, and actually naturally waive your intensities with more specific purposes, you'll find yourself having faster results. So that's all we're doing, is because what you're doing is you're working your central nervous system up to its maximum potential per whatever weight and rep range it is. Well, the body doesn't work like a computer. It's not biomechanical like that. The body has to stop, it's not, the body has to be able, you have to be able to waive the body's intensities and prepare the body to be able to handle the workload that you're going to give it. And trying to say that it's going to perform at its optimal workload week after week after week is, as you see, it's not practical or possible.
It's not practical or it's not possible. But the thing is, it's mentally, the training plan that I normally do is very low load mentally. And it's not like the training is actually, it takes a little bit longer than the training you're programming for me, even though there's less volume because I take longer rest periods in between sets. But the thing is, I know exactly how it's going to feel. And so when you do, whether it's when you're running a 5K, you're running a 10K, you're running a marathon, you're doing any sort of lift, in your mind, if you've done that type of workout enough, exactly, okay, this point it's going to be hard, this point it's going to be hard, this point's going to be really, really hard, this point's going to be hard, this point's going to be hard. And the more you're going through essentially a pain curve that you're familiar with, at least for me, and I'm sure that I'm not unique in this, the more you're going through a familiar pain curve, the less anxiety it gives you, because you know exactly what you've signed up for and you can handle it. Whereas with variable programming, every pain curve that you have will be different, right? You're mixing things up every few weeks. It's almost like, it's the same thing as if you're going to a new school every year as a kid. Like, you probably will learn more just being around different people, different environments. It's also going to be more stressful, more mentally stressful, because you're constantly evaluating new scenarios. And so for me, it's like, I kind of prefer to stay in the same school for most of the time. And I think I can get good results there, but I realize that if I want to maximize my learning, I need to switch my environments. And so I think
that's the point. Switch your environments. Because if you think about it in this particular way, if you're going in and you're mentally prepared for a specific intensity, that top set of deadlift, like, here's going to be hard, here's going to be hard, here's going to be really hard, this will be kind of easy, this will be kind of easy. Well, with programming that she was running before, while it can receive, obviously, results. Like, look, it's not like we can't receive it. Remember, though, Alex had spent a decade perfecting his body with the amount of output and input that he has, right? Am I right? Or maybe longer.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing,
But
yeah, I mean, I've been
yeah,
lifting for 15 years.
so
Yeah.
15
Yeah.
years of working towards this, where he's particularly at right now.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of it through this though, if you're putting if that hard part of the workout, which is going to be, we'll call it a top deadlift, if week after week, that stress you're only putting on that specific, right, deadlift, that top set of deadlifts, what's going to end up happening? You might see results, every few weeks, as Alex is
Mm-hmm.
seeing, like sometimes he goes in, sometimes he doesn't. So what I do, rather than putting that amount of stress directly on that specific lift, I'm going to pull his intensity down on the lift. I'm going to work more on his positioning, on his form, and his techniques. And I'm going to focus that higher intensity on an exercise that's his main weakness. And his main weakness, to say, is his hip hinge. So if his hip hinge is weak, rather than making him give full amount of effort on the deadlift, he's going to give more effort on the hip hinge work, which might be like a pin good morning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I want him to apply his effort. Why he's more sore than he's ever had, why these workouts are more harder than he has, because all we're doing is exposing where he's weak at.
Yeah. And ultimately, like, if you want to grow as a person, you need to fix what's weak. And I think, maybe, if not to beat a dead horse, like, the reason why, like, most people when they train are not training near their maximal capacity at all. Most people in the gym, frankly, if they show up, so most people probably aren't even showing up to the gym. And most people who show up, in some sense, are going through the motions. They're like, okay, so I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 here. I'm going to do 3 sets of 8 here. Maybe they don't even have it planned out. Like, a lot of times people go to the gym and they're just like, oh, I'll hit that machine, that station, that station.
That one's open, that one's open, yeah.
Yeah. So figure that this is the baseline. If you actually lay out like 1,000 people in the population, okay, 700 of those 1,000 have no interest in going to the gym whatsoever. Okay, fine. So 300 who may be interested in going to the gym. Of those 300, probably 240 of those people are going to be like that. Oh, like, I'll go to that class, or, oh yeah, I'll go do some bench press today. But they're going in there without a plan. So there's only like 60 people out of that 1,000, like 6%, who are going in there with some sort of plan. If you look at those 60 people, probably 10 to 20 of those 60 people, the plan is way too hard. Like, they're programming way too much for themselves. They're going to burn themselves out, get themselves injured. Like, their body cannot respond to the stimulus. But the reason they're willing to invest that is probably because they have some other insecurities or like mental issues that make them want to work out that much. And this is actually consistent across industries. Like, the people who put the most effort into
keep talking. I got to go use the restroom. You keep this up. This is good stuff.
Yeah. So the people who are, most likely to achieve at a very high level across industries oftentimes have serious insecurities. And this can be true in politics. This can be true in finance. This can be true in sports, where for the average human, if you give the average human a ton of power, you give the average human a 10 or 20, $30 million contract, that person's going to chill. Like, that person's just going to like hang out on Instagram, go like, talk to different girls, travel around the world, enjoy good food, live the good life. But you're not going to be the best in the world if, when given the opportunity to live really well, you take it. The way you become the best in the world is by continually investing as much or more than the next person and doing it more effectively. And so if you actually end up hanging out in circles where you find people who are the best in the world, oftentimes these people who are the best in the world, or who at least try their hardest to be the best in the world, have deep insecurities that they can properly channel to allow the output that they have in their jobs. And so this might work in certain areas in life, but it doesn't work really that well in the gym, because your body can't respond to just crushing itself every day. And so
it's the recovery aspect. It's having it, because training, too many folks look at it one dimensional.
Right.
I learned this. I went to Muscle Beach 3 or 4 years ago and did a photo shoot, which is super dope. And
it's his only show pony shoot ever.
Yeah, I look good. I look like Alex. But at the time, I was 180 pounds, and I was super
just
shredded.
Like me.
Just like you. I was shredded just like you. But at that time, when we went there, we were there for 7 days, and we were literally working out like 3 times a day because we had nothing better to do. We was fucking running and working out, and there's all this good food around. And Jay was with me, and he was starving himself because he was all about these preps and wasn't doing them right. He had poor guidance at the time.
Probably,
and I'm just kind of winging this based off how my body feels. So I'm eating like cookies at night. You know me. I had popsicles, Alex thinks some Reese cups. So I'm eating this stuff, but I'm maintaining this super lean physique. But then I started realizing we are working out so much And I had really, my energy wasn't focused anywhere besides just working out. That's what we were doing while we were there and collecting sun, right? What I decided to do was I'm going to eat my fucking ass off. If I'm hungry, as long as it's a whole food or relatively healthy, I'm putting it in my body.
Mm-hmm.
What I began to realize during that time, I was growing and looking better by the photo shoot at the end of the week. I looked better than anybody else that was fucking there. And I was eating way more than I was. What I was realizing was I was my energy output,
Mm-hmm.
how much I was putting into the trainings that we were doing each and every day. We get to train with Michael Hearn and all these high level guys at Gold's Gym. So it's like, you got to show up. You can't fucking show up and not in 405 for reps being shredded. You know, so I'm doing my thing, you know, work my ass off. So I started realizing that time that if I'm just able to match, and I keep saying this, I feel like I'm being a dead horse, but if I keep saying, because you do this perfectly, if I'm able to match how much output I'm putting out, as long as I'm putting that in, I'm going to still be able to produce. Which is why the top athletes, when they have great trainers, they get better throughout their career. They have less injuries throughout their career, because what's happening is the coach is able to put them in a sphere that's relative to their energy input and output. What happens is people think that the hardest amount of training goes into the actual hour that you're training. The hardest thing is making sure that you're getting proper sleep, proper hydration, proper recovery, and obviously you're naturally balanced. You're making sure you have the nutrients that you actually need in your body. And that's where most people are failing. And that's why a lot of people can't make it to that next level, is because they're overdoing one or the other. It's either they're focusing too much on their nutrition. You know, I'm going to throw carnivores under the bus. You know, they're only focused on being carnivore, and they are dead set in their ways of being, and then they're suffering their performance in the gym. And vice versa, someone in the gym who's giving all they have, but then they're eating Reese cups before bed and they're not receiving the recovery that they need.
Yeah. And
not putting the right nutrients into their body.
Yeah. And I think, you know, my background in media, you know, working for Google made me think about this a little bit more than probably most people do, in terms of why are people following these suboptimal plans where it seems that, you know, Zach's results, where it does seem like he was doing intuitive eating at Muscle Beach, and I've been doing intuitive eating for years. Like I've eaten to caloric floors. I've never eaten to a caloric cap. So I have gone about it, you know, I need to eat at least 4,000 calories a day. I've never gone about my eating saying I cannot eat more than 3,000 calories a day. I cannot eat more than 2,500 calories per day. And I think what you have to realize for most programs and most methodologies is they need to be taught from a centralized top-down source. So most people don't learn things by getting their hands dirty. So let me take that back. Most professionals haven't learned their profession from getting their hands dirty and having 10 or 15 years of experience in the field. That's not how you get a credential. The way you get a credential is by studying for a test and passing that test. And so if you need to study for a test that's created by some third party and pass the test that's created by some third party, all they can do is guide you towards averages. All they can do is say, the typical person who wants to lose weight needs to force an energy mismatch between the calories consumed and calories output. They give you like really, really high level stuff that is not necessarily the most effective for an individual, but they give you information that the average person can utilize and is like more or less true for the average person. And so what most people who are like registered dietitians or certified personal trainers will have their athletes do is they're only able to prescribe to them programming or suggestions that have some sort of peer review study associated with them. But the thing about peer review studies, there's a couple components to them. Number one, when it comes to training, they force compliance. So you're not part of a peer reviewed study unless you actually do the plan that exactly as it's been prescribed to you, which doesn't take into account dropout rates. It doesn't take into account like long-term drains on motivation. So there is not really the mental component of optimizing a program if you only base it on what peer-reviewed studies are out there for various exercises. From a diet standpoint, the easiest thing to track for people is calories consumed. And so I think most of the nutritional information around there that exists is around like calories in, calories out. But the reality is nobody actually knows how many calories they're using. And frankly, nobody knows how many calories they're consuming. And so even if you're the most rigid about everything, every food you eat is weighed, every food you It's all measured out and everything like that. It's like, well, do you think all cows have the same body fat? Because if they don't have the same body fat, that 16 ounce ribeye that you had, or the 16 ounce New York strip, is not going to have the same amount of calories, not going to have the same amount of grams.
It's all generalized.
Yeah. It's like if you cut, if you ate my arm versus you ate Zach's arm, like, and you ate 16 ounces of each, like they're not going to have the same caloric profile. So people get wrapped up in this false precision, and a lot of what gets taught and certified in our society is based around false precision and false science. And, people, because most people are sloppy in their thinking and most people can't do math, when the average person is around someone who quotes a study with a number and a statistic in it, they think, oh my God, this person knows what they're talking about. But really, that person might not know at all what they're talking about. They're just good at speaking about generalities, right? You want to get
good at regurgitating content. We were just talking about studies the other day, and, and we were talking about, okay, the idea was my buddy's running, he's doing some research this year. Same buddy we did research on the force output platforms, and he's going to a university in town, which is I'm grateful for, because I'm able to utilize a lot of their high tech shit that I just can't afford. That's thousands of dollars, but I can get studies off of it and be like, cool, this is relative. This makes sense. Right. So basically they're doing on blood restricted flow training. So essentially, like, let's say that you have, some elbow issues, or ankle issues like I did. So blood restriction would be like that flossing. Have you ever saw anything like that? Blood restricted training? So basically, like, for recovery purposes, but there's not any, it says, hey, this can work, right? This can definitely work. Here's one method though that definitely worked for me was I sprained my ankle, and I 3 days later, I went on a 5-mile hike with my family through the woods and made my own path. My ankle felt a whole lot better after it, because it was working through different ranges of motion and had great blood flow. But I can't schedule that for somebody to say, hey, go walk 5 miles. That's how I helped my sprained ankle. No, because my fucking ankle was swollen up after, but the next day I was like, dang, this motherfucker feels good. This thing. But anyways, getting back to that blood restricted flow recovery, or rehab, if you will, they restrict the blood flow, but they want to know, when you're doing that specific, is it causing issues anywhere else? And that's where people miss a lot. So let's say you're doing it on the elbow and you're doing multiple blood restrictions. Is that going to change ranges of motion though? That's going to affect the rotator cuff? Because that study hasn't yet been ran. They're like, oh, it works. Okay, good. Let's push it through. And remember, research is always 3 or 4 years behind. How long does it take to get something published? So the lead is now, there's a lot of gym bros who are just saying shit to say, shit to sell it on social media. Let's not get it twisted. But people who are leading research are the gym bros. It's the people who's actually in the fire right now, conducting research and finding results. And we were able to recognize that. I was able to recognize that 3 or 4 years ago. I'm like, my shit's so cutting edge. Just half this just I haven't researched yet. People think I'm crazy for a lot of things that I say. Simply, there's no research done on it. So I realize now that I have to start conducting my own research, so that I'm able to put myself in a position to express this research, because there is a vast majority of the population that doesn't want bro science. They want to know what's actually backed. And I'm saying, well, I can give you it, and this is actually backed, but I'm telling you, I've done some research, and I've already found that half of this stuff is bogus. I've already debunked it. Here's the deal though. I've debunked it with specific athletes, but you don't fall into the category of specific athletes. So you might work better with that old research, or you might work better with this new research based off the demand of, your job, your sleep pattern, and your stress levels. Things that coaches don't take into consideration, especially when you're mass producing for people. So when I work directly with somebody, I'm looking for, okay, where's your stress levels? How much are you sleeping? Where's your energy levels throughout your day when you're not training? Because if I only focus on that 1 hour when you're training, well, what happens in the other 23 hours is really going to matter what that hour of programming actually looks like. If I know you have a lot of kids and you're doing e-learning because you're on COVID-19 and you're stressed out because you lost your job, and you're not eating the T-bone steaks that you was eating before because money's a little bit tight, I need to rearrange your output that you're going to have in your programming so that you can still see results. So actually, if I scale your programming back, you'll do better with less of a workload, because I'm matching where your central nervous system is, where your stress is, where you're actually, how much you're actually putting demand on your body outside of training. So if you find yourself in seasons where you can't get results, sometimes you need less or a more effective approach. You're probably not focusing on the things that you're actually weak at.
Right. And that's the kind of the shortcomings. And we've talked about this. And as my learning progresses, I get a better sense of the shortcomings that exist within our education system and our peer review research system. And so frankly, if you're trying to prove something is true, it's easier to do it on a single variable basis. So it's easier to say higher volume leads to better hypertrophy. Here's the study that I did. One group did 20 sets of 8, and then the other group did 12 sets of 8, and the group that did 20 sets of 8 had better hypertrophic results than the group that did 12 sets of 8. Therefore, volume leads to hypertrophy. And it's like, okay, so that is true. Like, I'm quoting fake studies, but like, it's very plausible that a study like that exists and it's true. And you can say, okay, this one variable, this is how this one output relates to this one variable. But the reality is, in the real world, there are thousands of variables, of which maybe a dozen are actually important. And so, like, really important. And so if your programming doesn't actually take into account those specific 12 variables for you, then there's really no need to be super precise and saying, well, we chose this because the peer-reviewed study did this. We chose that because the peer-reviewed study did that, because it doesn't take into account your particular situation. And so what you end up seeing at the high-performing level is the people who are cutting edge can't, by definition, have peer-reviewed research to back up what they're doing, because if they did, it wouldn't be cutting edge. Every other person could replicate it. And because they have a better level of understanding of their own body or their client's body than a peer-reviewed research team can have over a group of like 20, 30, 40 people. One example comes to mind is 48 hours ago, I was talking to my buddy who played 7 years in the major leagues, and he played in the Orioles organization. He is like good friends with Brady Anderson, who was like a player that I really like admired growing up. Saw that guy's physique, he's super jacked, whatever. And when I talked to my friend Ryan about Brady's training, he's like, Brady doesn't write out his workouts. Like, he doesn't know how many sets of squats he's going to do before he goes into the gym. And if you think about it, like, very few people do that, right? It'd be very hard for Zach to write programming that says, do the amount of squats that you're supposed to do, like, keep doing sets until you feel this way, right? Because it's really impossible to match, like the actual stimulus that you experience should be understood by your own body in many, many layers greater detail than I did 3 sets of 5 squatting. I did 5 sets of 4 squatting. But it's really, really hard to transfer that idea from someone to the next person. Keep squatting until you feel like this. It's much, much easier to say, do this amount of sets of this amount of reps. And because it's so much easier to transmit information with that level of precision, the information that gets transmitted actually loses some degree of resolution, because what matches your body can't be enumerated with that great quantity.
Oh my gosh, you literally just talked about what me and my guys were talking about the other day for like an hour and a half. I was like, I got to change my stimulus right now, because here's the deal. I have the general strength that I need to be really, really close to becoming a pro 231 strongman athlete, which is really, really hard to do, because the 231 division is fucking stacked, because these guys cut.
You have to gain 40 pounds.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, I'd be competing at like 215, but my general strength is high enough to compete at that level. So like, I have the 230-pound strength and mindset to do really well, if not come really close to my pro card within the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. But what I was telling my guys is, I'm running a specific program for me and my team based around becoming better strongman athletes. So we're not doing a ton of bench press and stuff, right? Because we don't bench the strongman. So you're trying to match our exercises that are going to make sense for becoming better strongman athletes. What I'm realizing, though, is in the process of me doing this, I spent the last 15 years perfecting. Is my good on the mic, by the way, Alex?
It's a little bit distorted, but maybe step back.
I spent the last 15 years perfecting my body to do the squat, the bench, the deadlift. I've become the king at being in a static position and being extremely optimal in those positions. What that led, though, and this is what I want to talk about, is when you do too much of anything, it can be a negative if your goals change. Well, my goals change, and now I got to do moving events. Every strongman has at least 2, if not 3 moving out of 5 events. Mm-hmm. So if half to a little bit more above half of the exercises I don't do well in, for the fact being that biomechanically speaking, my body doesn't move like a normal person's. Mm-hmm. I was never bow-legged, but 15 years of sumo deadlifting and wide stand squatting, I become bow-legged. I'm so hip dominant that my legs my hips, when I run, my gait wants to go like this, out, then in. Yeah, my gait's all fucked up. So what I've had to do was pull back on the heavy squatting, pull back
Mm-hmm.
on the heavy sumo deadlifting, and that's why you see me doing more like front squats and split stance squat work now.
Mm-hmm.
You see me doing like, I want to start more sprints. It
Yeah.
sounds funny because I'm turning quote unquote a little bit more show pony, but all I'm
Right.
doing is I got to spend the next 2 years developing my athleticism back out while keeping my strength up to par in order for me to achieve the end goal of becoming a better strongman athlete.
Right. And I've kind of done something similar to myself because I'm not competing in sports right now, is the optimizing for a single thing is incredibly stressful, because anytime you chase a static target, there's a million other people who are chasing that same static target, right? So if you want to be able to squat more than everybody in the world, everybody knows what a squat is. And what you'll have to give up to get that last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds is a lot. Like, you need to be out on the marginal return curve so far that you're actually making compromises in other areas of your life, whether it's health, whether it's like disc integrity, whether it's joint
Family,
integrity.
friends.
Like you need to make, if you're, I don't even know what the world record for squat is. Say it's like 1,000 pounds, ridiculous, right? If you're trying to make that jump from like 930 to 1,000 pounds, like, you're probably doing things that almost any sane person would say is crazy. Why are you willing to give up that to get that?
100%. And that goes for anything, like being the CEO of your company,
Anything.
owning your
Yeah.
own business. Anything, too much of anything is going to result in less of something else, because all it is focus.
Right.
In order to get to a certain level to squat 800 pounds, it requires an extreme level of focus
Right.
and a ton of effort outside of the gym. Like you said, you're
Right.
going to compromise both on body structure, development. I'm underdeveloped. So if you are a deadlift only guy, you see all these deadlift only guys can't bench. They
Right.
fucking suck. They can't press 315. Where
Right.
you're like, well, why? Well, because they focused solely on developing out the deadlift. But also,
Right.
in strength sports, most of these motherfuckers don't get paid, and they don't know
Right.
how to get paid on social media and don't know how to create business for themselves. So what they do is they get really, really strong, and they put out this resume of developing themselves immensely in the amount of strength that they're able to put out. But then, you see most of them still live at home. Like the best powerlifter of all time, Eddie Cohen, which was a dude that I'm like, this guy's great. He lived at home with his parents till he's like 25, 30. I don't forget, maybe 30 or something, because he talks all about all the time. If my parents didn't let me stay at home, I wouldn't be able to be the level of powerlifter I was, because
Right.
he didn't have any time or energy to spend on a normal job. While
Right.
other people were working normal jobs, he was able to increase himself more in the numbers. And it makes total sense, because with me, in my particular case, I squatted 535, benched 365, and deadlift 535 at 550 when I was in the coal mines working 12, 14 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
including my commute. The month I got out of the coal mine, I squatted and deadlifted 600 within
Yeah.
1 month,
Of course.
because my body was fucking fresh.
Right. I mean, that's not surprising. And sort of one of my, I guess, saving graces over the last several years is because I haven't been competing in any strongman competitions, or I haven't been competing in any powerlifting competitions, I've kept running. And so one of the things that I notice is different for me compared to other people who are either doing powerlifting or people who are, into bodybuilding or physique, is I put a lot more effort and focus on my conditioning than most people on fitness Twitter. So most people look at conditioning in different ways than I do, and they'll fall into two different camps. So most people will not do it, right? So a lot of power lifters, maybe Zach 12 months ago, will not do any form of conditioning at all, because it's just like, why do
Especially, and the only reason though they shouldn't is if they're trying to reach for that top level. And that's something that I've learned through experience.
Yeah.
Everyone should still do sprints and sled. And I knew this years ago, because I had a guy, my training mentor says, whatever you do, just make sure you always do sled work. If you do 4 sets of sled work on your leg days, you're going to be okay. Well, I'm like, fuck you. I told him, fuck you. I'm not doing 8 sets of sled work a week, because fuck sleds.
Right.
So I basically stopped doing them because I was boxing and I was overwhelmed with the sled work and the running work. So I stopped doing it. But if you're just in this mid-range level and you're not actually in that 0.1% setting like a massive number, a massive world record, you can continue your conditioning. And it's actually going to, if you place it right in your programming, and you make sure that on those days that you're getting adequate rest and nutrition and hydration, it'll actually serve you to be becoming a better strength athlete.
Of course. And so what people who are maybe listening might not realize, looking at me, I'm not a top I'm not a top 0.1% athlete. You know, some people might say that I am, but I'm not. I'm really, you know, if you compare my speed, strength, athleticism, you know, probably top 3% or something like that. What are we lighting here?
Bro, this is all the fire you're spitting right now.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm probably nice. I'm probably like, you know, top 3%, I think is fair. You know, I'm 98, you know, maybe lower 99th percentile in terms of what I can do, my strength output. But like, if you just went to like any powerlifting meet, all of those guys are stronger than me. If you go to a strongman meet, all of those people are stronger than me. If you go to a bodybuilding competition, all of those people have leaner,
it depends on the competition, to be honest.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. Cause like something that I know, cause you was basically a professional athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at things, your grading skill is quite high.
Yeah.
Like you won't be in the 0.1% for powerlifters, but anybody who comes in at like, cause you can, you know, we'll squat 550. What's your squat? How much do you squat?
Low 4.
Okay. So low 4 is a skate. We say we get you squat to 450 and you're able to pull 550 to 600. That's 1,000. And if you can bench 3 plates, that's 1,300. If we get you to a 1,500 pound total for 181, that's elite.
Oh.
So you're not far away just with your, like you said, the very low level of, not low level, but the very low output of training that you're basically providing to be a strength athlete.
Right.
Your training is not geared to be a powerlifter.
Right.
But really, you're only 200 pounds away into the bell curve.
Right.
You're only a small adjustment away from being an elite powerlifter.
Yeah. And then, but
you see
what
I'm saying? And your physique is not too far away from getting on stage, and you could win some local shows. But Probably. Now you're just talking about level of competition, right?
Right. And then you think about, just to be realistic about, like, what am I willing to give up to go to a local show? Like, do I actually want to look like a pro bodybuilder? No, I don't. I actually think that for general life purposes, if I actually looked like a pro bodybuilder, especially living in Silicon Valley, people would think I was dumb. It would actually hurt me. And that's what people struggle to realize, that continual improvement along certain specific tracks may actually hurt you in other areas of your life. So my body's developed enough physically to where I'm basically maximizing the advantages of being in good shape. And if I was in even better shape, like 2 weeks ago when I was, you know, like my leanest ever, I was looking in the mirror. I'm like, this is almost bordering to where I think it would look worse if I continue to get leaner. Like I'm almost, not quite, but I'm almost to the point where I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, is that like, I'm not starving myself, but I'm not sure that even looks healthy. And so when you're deep out on that bell curve where your powerlifting total is 1,500, but you want to get to 1,600, it's 1,700, you want to get to 1,800, or your body fat's 4%, you want to get to 3%. Actually making that leap comes at a huge cost. And so for me as a lifestyle planner, I always thought, like, well, I'm just going to keep doing my conditioning because I don't actually need to get that far out on any individual bell curve. I actually just want to optimally be good at the average of all the things that I do, a combination of strength and conditioning. And so, yes, I want to be able to do better on bench press. Yes, I want to be able to do better on squats. Yes, I want to be able to do better on deadlifts. And when I'm doing those particular exercises, I'm giving myself max focus to improve at those specific things. But I'm also concerned 3 years ago, about my mile time. Now it's like, I'm also concerned about how I perform in my intervals. And so one thing that allows me to do differently than a lot of people in the bodybuilding space is I don't diet the way bodybuilders diet. The only way that I manipulate my programming if I want to get leaner is I place more of an effort on the output of my conditioning. You know, so I look at my conditioning like it's a lift, where most people look at conditioning like it's a thing they need to get over with. And when you look at it like it's a thing that you need to get over with, you get the results that match what is essentially going through the motion. So if you applied your mindset towards conditioning, if you applied that same mindset towards squatting and benching, you would not get better at benching and squatting, because you would just go and like, oh, I have 5 sets of 5. Okay, I did them all. You might even get hurt because your focus isn't going to be there. You're just trying to like get through the repetitions. The way that I've found that I can progress from a physique standpoint, but also from a conditioning standpoint, is at least, once a week or more. I'm conditioning a few times a week, but at least once a week, I'm going in there and I'm trying to beat my PR of the previous week. And that's very, very hard for a short period of time, 10, 12 minutes. It's not like I'm exhausted 45 minutes, hour, and just hate life, but it does require a very high amount of focus for a, 8 to 12 minute period of time, 8 to 15 minute period of time. And so very few people in any domain, bodybuilders don't do condition. They do low intensity, steady state conditioning, and they manipulate their calorie consumption in order to get lean. Powerlifters don't do any conditioning. And then athletes do conditioning where it's targeted towards a very specific thing. So if it's a speed athlete, it's I want to get faster. If it's a distance athlete, I want to be able to run this distance events better. But I think the fact that I can introduce some degree of competitive gamified conditioning to a strength program has made it such that I'm able to get slow gains over a multi-year period of time that maybe don't put me exactly at the elite level, but get me close to the elite level and probably at optimal levels across all of the things that I consider to be important, whether it's a combination of not just looking good with my shirt off, not just being strong, not just being in good condition, but
it's all your metrics.
All of those. Yeah.
And that's just basing your metrics of success. Like for me, my metric of success is not to have the abs that you have. I actually look up show ponies. And this is funny because I'm going to be on record saying this. I've said this though for years, and I've been talking on a podcast. The reason I didn't choose bodybuilding in that realm of things, it's boring. I don't want to focus on just time under tension all the time. I'm not intrigued by pushing my body into that realm of things. Yeah. And B is the kitchen. I want to eat the fuck ever I want to eat. And I've always been this way. Mm-hmm. So this is true. So I've always been envious, if you will, of guys, man, you can maintain that shredded physique all year long. Good for you. You're dialed in. You really understand your input to output. That's and you're disciplined in it. For me, on the other hand, I'm cool with a little layer of fat around my belly. I don't have to be the most leanest guy. But what I do care about is anytime I lay down, I can bench 405 right now. I've only benched twice in 6 months. Mm-hmm. I benched 325 for 10 the other day. I one arm curl the 120 and press it over my head. These are the things that I base my metrics of success on. So if I'm to train somebody, say it's someone in the realm of that you're in, they're in a corporate realm and they're like, hey, I just want to look real good. I don't want to go train a bunch. And I would like to get a little bit stronger. I'm not going to put them on a periodization program or a progression program. I'm not even going to have them squat and deadlifting all that much because there's no reason to apply that energy there when I can get more bang for my buck based off of what his metrics of success were. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's something that gets twisted with people with me. They think I'm only powerlifter or only bodybuilder coach. I'm like, no, I coach for everybody because once you understand what each individual's metrics of success is, you just apply the programming that fits them best. Mm-hmm. And that's why a standardized program that anybody gets is never going to be as good as working with an individual coach.
Yeah. And that's true with anything.
Yeah, and hey, I'm running out of time. I got another podcast. I thought this was great.
I thought this was great too, and my brain's running out of steam too. So that's perfect ending. We'll try to cut this and get this out fairly soon.
When you're cutting it, you just got to basically just hit record and just drop it out. We ain't gonna make no edits to it. This was so good, and I don't edit no podcast.
No, probably. We'll just get the gibberish in the beginning, but that's totally fine.
I thought the gibberish was good.
I thought it was good too, but we got two technical geniuses, Zach and Alex. So despite the fact that we're recording at 9:47 Mountain Time on Wednesday, I assure you it will take me several hours. Plus I have a work day ahead of me, so it'll take me maybe several hours, if not tonight, to be able to get this out and released. But let us know. Obviously, you hit us up on Twitter. If there's any content that you guys want to hear more of, we'll take it into consideration. But for the most part, we're just having fun with this too.
Yeah, we love to do like Q&As, to people and stuff. And listen, I always ask, like, it's always good if you enjoy our content. The least you could do, we're giving it to you for free, right? The least you could do is like and subscribe and tell a friend about it. Leave a comment. If you don't like the content, didn't your mom ever teach you anything? If you don't like nothing, don't say nothing at all. Just go ahead and move on. It's not for you anyway.
Or if you're looking for a compilation of Zach's best lifts, just tell him that the content's terrible, and then he'll just
put it on Twitter.
Tweet string.
Your deadlift form sucks. Me 600 for 16, flexing on these motherfuckers. Look, I'm flexing in the back too. I know you didn't notice this; it's a little far away, but I got some Clorox wipes back in the back. That's
what rich people have these days.
I might put it on. The reason being, these things have been here for like 6 months since we got this place. I just never cleaned the place.
That's called buy low, sell high. You got them when you could get them. You can't get them anymore.
Not. Just rather love this.
Do it soon. See ya.
Yep.